English, American English, American English webinar series. Teach and learn. American English webinar series.
Hello, teachers around the world. Welcome to our last session in American English Webinar Series 3, brought to you by the American English team at the U.S. Department of State in Washington, D.C. Here you can see teachers participating in a viewing group at the Information Resource Center in Djibouti. Thanks for sending that in, Turkey Ismail. We always love seeing our viewing group photos. Please be sure to share any webinar viewing group photos from today by emailing them to americanenglishwebinars@elprograms.org. We may feature them at the start of the next series, Series 4. My name is Heather, also known as Moderator Heather, and I'm part of the American English team. You'll also see Moderator Katie today here in the chat box helping you out during the webinar. Here's a look back at the exciting topics that we covered in Series 3. We covered a lot of different things, everything from theater and song to some exciting topics related to gender equality and student-centered classroom management, more on group work, and today we're going to have a lot of great information on English language clubs. Take some time to reflect on what you learned this series and think about what your favorite webinar of the series was so far. In terms of participation, as you all know by now, the way that you're going to participate is by typing in the chat box. The chat box is where you can ask questions or make comments related to today's topic. The presenter will also ask you poll questions, and these multiple choice and multiple answer questions will appear on the screen for you to answer. Unfortunately, some of you may experience technical problems during the webinar, and we will try to let you know if we're having a global problem. If you do lose sound, you can follow along with the caption pod if refreshing your internet browser doesn't correct the problem. Most of you are also familiar with our Ning site, but if you haven't registered yet, please do join this dynamic online community for EFL teachers. It may take up to 72 hours for your registration to be approved, so we appreciate your patience. And here on the Ning, you can find resources and discussion questions related to each webinar, as well as all of the webinar recordings and featured materials. The Ning is also where you can ask the presenters questions after the webinar and live chat with your fellow community members. Those of you who attend at least 4 out of 6 webinars will receive an e-certificate from your regional English language office or local U.S. embassy. E-certificates are issued locally several weeks after the series ends today. If you do not receive your e-certificate after approximately 6 weeks, please first get in touch with your local point of contact, your RELO office or U.S. Embassy. And if your question isn't resolved then, you can contact American English Webinars@elprograms.org for more information. This information will also be on the Ning. And to ensure you are eligible for that e-certificate, we will ask you to submit your attendance at the very end of the webinar today. And we will give you information to access a link to enter your attendance information, and we'll be there to assist you with filling out the requested details. And finally, before we get started, we want to give you a preview of the great topics we have in store for Webinar Series 4. That series is going to begin on September 7th and will run through November 16th. Our main topics are going to be teaching young learners, teaching academic writing, and education trends and issues in the world today. You can see the topics listed here, and more details will be available for you on the Ning. Again, you'll need to register for that series with your regional English language officer or local U.S. Embassy. Look out for an announcement on the Ning. All right, and on to today's session, creating and sustaining English language clubs to enhance English learning. Are you looking for ways to practice English? Are you interested in exploring topics such as democracy, gender equality, social justice, interfaith dialogue, and human rights? This webinar will explore the wide variety of English language clubs around the world, club membership, and the activities typically used at club meetings. The webinar will also discuss specific strategies for creating and sustaining clubs, problems that club leaders may encounter, as well as potential solutions, and strategies for encouraging members to participate in the wide variety of interesting and provocative activities that will promote language practice, conversations, and social change actions. And now it is my pleasure to introduce today's presenters, Kathleen Malu and Bryce Smedley. Dr. Kathleen Malu is Professor of Literacy and Language at William Patterson University of New Jersey. With more than 40 years of teaching experience, she has taught EFL while serving with the Peace Corps in the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda. She's also taught EFL and worked with teachers in Ethiopia, Kenya, Turkey, and South Africa. Kathleen was a 2009-2010 Fulbright Scholar in Rwanda, and she'll serve as a Fulbright Scholar in the UK in 2017. Her research focuses on middle-level education, literacy, and English language education across Africa. Also presenting today is Dr. Bryce Smedley, who has served in Africa as a Senior English Language Fellow for the U.S. Department of State for the past 3 years. There, he co-developed several manuals for English language clubs and American Readers Clubs. Bryce served as a Peace Corps volunteer in Kenya, and he has taught in the field of language education in Afghanistan, Comoros, Democratic Republic of Congo, Mongolia, and Thailand. Bryce is an assistant professor in education at Lewis Clark State College in Idaho. His academic interests include applied linguistics, sociolinguistics, and linguistic rights and preservation. A big welcome to you both.
Okay, Heather, thank you so much for that wonderful introduction. And now, before I begin, I'd like to turn the microphone over to my colleague Bryce for him to say just a few words to you before we start. Bryce, off to you.
Greetings, everyone. It's so nice to have everyone log in from all over the world, from places like Iraq and Europe and Africa and the South African contingent down there and Japan and Asia. We are very excited to talk about this today. And our hope is not only do you learn about English clubs, but that you join us and join your colleagues throughout the world and help us create an English club movement that we can do all over the world. And I'll end by this before I give it back to Kathy. Every school in the world has a football team or a soccer team so people can practice their soccer skills. Wouldn't it be wonderful if every school in the world or community had an English club so learners can practice their language skills? That would be our hope. So thank you so much for having me. And Kathy, and I will turn it back over to my colleague to begin our presentation.
Thanks, Bryce. And thank you once again to Heather and the team at American English. Let's begin by having a quick look at the pre-webinar poll results. We have quite a few people who have been members of an English club, and we have some people who would like to join an English club. I see that there are quite a few people who have participated in English clubs or clubs in general at schools, and many of you have already participated in English clubs. Some of you have had club meetings at schools and at community centers. So I have a feeling that some of you already have an idea about what we're going to talk about today, and that's great. So let's begin by looking at the webinar goals for today. We have 5 webinar goals that we would like to focus on, and I'm wondering if we can look at those goals right now. We have the first goal is to give a definition of English clubs. The second goal will be for us to explain how English clubs enhance learning. Our third goal will be to discuss ways to create English clubs, including membership, leadership, and meeting places. And our fourth goal will be to share practical ideas about ways in which we can sustain English language clubs. And our final goal, and probably the most important goal, is to talk about ways that we can exchange ideas about having fun, interesting, and enjoyable English club activities. So let's get started. Let's go to the chat box first, and I'd like to hear from all of you, what is an English language club? What do you envision it to be? And I'll give you just a moment to give me some ideas here about what you see. Okay. We have people who have used a singing club. We have people who have done extracurricular clubs. We have a storytelling club. We have a fun through English club. Wow, these are all terrific ideas. So let me now give you an idea about how we perceive English clubs. So what is an English club? An English club is a series of meetings with like-minded people, that means people who think in similar ways, to practice English and to help our community by doing fun, interesting, and enjoyable activities in a relaxed, playful environment. Have a look at this photo. It's from an English club in Kinshasa. The members in front are giving a skit. You can see that they're having fun and doing some really interesting activities. So, as we begin to think about English clubs, my first question is, what are the differences between learning English in the classroom and practicing English in a club? I see that some of you are saying the purpose of a club is to make English fun, to promote intercultural understanding, to create affordances for learners to learn English. These are all fabulous. More fun, yes. Develop fluency, absolutely. And practice the language, absolutely. These are all great ideas. So let's compare now the difference between a classroom and a club environment. In the classroom, as you can see in this photo, I'm teaching at Mekelle University in Ethiopia. I'm the teacher. I'm standing in the front of the classroom. Students are sitting and listening to me. Students give answers that are right or wrong, correct or incorrect, and the atmosphere is formal. Students are concentrating and memorizing what I tell them, and we meet during traditional class hours. What about in the club? Sorry, everybody, I'm getting used to this. Okay, in a club, there is a facilitator or a leader, or maybe there's just a leader. In a club, we also have members who practice language by doing fun, interesting, and enjoyable activities. The language practice focuses on creativity and the complexity of language. The atmosphere is relaxed. It's not formal. The activities are fun and playful. The clubs meet at times that are convenient for the members. As you can see from the members in this photograph in the English club in Kinshasa, they look like they're having fun. They're relaxed and enjoying themselves. You can't hear them, but I promise you that they are speaking English. How does this happen? What happens in English clubs that encourage people to practice English that is different from the classroom? Let's have a brief look at what research tells us. How do English clubs enhance language use? In the fields of language acquisition, education, and learning theory researchers, they have found that there are certain elements necessary for learning language, and we find these in English clubs. English clubs are socially situated. That means there is social interaction. People talk to each other. Learning is activity-based. The activities are the focus and not the language. The atmosphere is supportive, encouraging, and respectful. Members control the experience. They do what they want. They are not told what to do. Club activities are fun and intellectually challenging, not boring. And this environment helps to keep the affective filter low. This is the research base that supports the use of English clubs. Now let's go back for a moment to our conversation about clubs, and I have a poll question for you. Can we have English clubs only in academic places like schools or universities? What do you think? Please vote yes if you think we can only have clubs in schools or universities, and vote no if you think we can have clubs outside of schools. Let me see. We've got 90% of you that think that the answer is no. And I have to agree with you. There can be English clubs in schools and universities, but yes, we can also have English clubs outside of schools, in communities where people want to practice English. Okay, let's continue in the chat box now. I have another question for you. Do you know anyone or any groups who want to practice English, who are not in schools or universities? Who might want to or need to practice English? Let's see what your answers are. We've got teachers, yes, of course. And what other groups might want to practice English? Police officials, absolutely. Students, teachers, workers, communities. Wow, you're going so fast I can hardly keep up with the reading here. Teachers, yes. Students, government officials, absolutely. Professionals, retired people. Oh, these are all fabulous. So you already know that there are a wide group of people who would like to practice English. So now, let's look at my ideas about who I think can practice or would like to practice English. You can see that there are medical professionals, taxi drivers, people who work in hospitals like nurses and doctors. They may need to be able to speak English because they may have visitors, or they may have materials and information they need that is only available in English. Taxi drivers and tourist agents may need to work with visitors who speak only English, so they will have more customers if they speak English. Faith communities, particularly those with international connections, may want to speak English. Lawyers, artisans, musicians, novice teachers, all of these groups may want to be able to speak English. Now, with all of this interest, let's have a look at what we need to do to create English language clubs. The first steps are for the facilitator or the teacher to create. In schools or universities, the facilitator can be the teacher or the professor. This would be the person who organizes the club. For community clubs, this person can be anyone who wants to start a club. The first steps the facilitator needs to do is to find interested students or like-minded people who want to practice English and help the community. We can find these people by asking friends, neighbors, students in our classes. We can advertise. The next item, the facilitator needs to find a meeting place. This meeting place is very important. It can be a temporary place where people can come together for the first meeting, but it can be a place where they'll only meet for the first few times for the initial meeting, and then they might want to change it. The final step that the facilitator needs to consider is the time of the meeting. And that, again, should be a time when everyone would be able to come together. Now, I'd like to hear from you in the chat box. What things should we talk about in the first few club meetings? What do you think? Let's see. I see that there are ideas for ways in which we can get together, improving skills and such. But what about topics to talk about? Yes, the goals of the club, the introduction, the warm-up, the culture, the interests, action planning with the members. These are all fabulous, fabulous. Hobbies, interests, these are all wonderful ideas. Okay, so what does the facilitator need to do before the meeting? The facilitator needs to remember a few things. First, the club is for practicing English, and the facilitator must remember to be an advisor, not a teacher. It may be helpful for the facilitator to think about coaching and not teaching. The facilitator should be supportive, flexible, and nurturing. Remember that the club meeting is not for teaching. The facilitator must keep an open mind, and the facilitator must focus on others. Focus on collaborating, building consensus, and community. Consensus may be a new word for some of you. It means majority. So when we build consensus, we want to convince a majority of people, the potential club members, to support whatever we propose. The facilitator must remember that the club has members, not students. The club is not a classroom. These are very important for teachers to remember because teachers will need to play the role of facilitator and not teacher. Now, we're ready to talk about the first meeting. At the first meeting, or in the first few meetings, we recommend that the facilitator ask potential members about their availability for meetings. First, it's important to decide on the frequency of the meetings, next, the dates, the times, the lengths of meetings, and the meeting locations. We suggest that these items can be flexible. For example, you can pick one day a week or one day a month, or maybe you want to rotate the meetings. For example, one week have Mondays, next week have Tuesday, next week have Wednesday. Or maybe you want to alternate, one week a Saturday, one week a Sunday. The idea is to be as flexible as possible so as many members can come as that is possible. Okay, if you have some ideas for this question, please post them in the chat box. When do you, or when would you, schedule meetings for your clubs? And I see that some of you are acknowledging that, yes, it's very important to be flexible. Communication is very important. Some of you would focus the meetings in the evenings, on the weekends. A lot of people focusing on the weekends. Yes, what's really important is to remember that the club should accommodate members. All right, the second area that we need to talk about is what to talk about in the first meeting. Items to talk about in the first meeting include the needs and the goals of the club, the interests, topics for club activities, the organizational structure, the communication structure, the club rules, and the ways in which to elect or select the leadership. It's also important that the facilitator remember to accept all ideas, keep an open mind, and be flexible. Be sure to be supportive. The facilitator can say helpful things like, "That's an interesting idea," "That's a helpful suggestion," "That's an interesting topic." Bryce will give us lots of ideas for club activities and topics in just a few minutes. Meanwhile, let's turn our attention to the organizational structure of a club. There are different ways to organize a club. Here on this slide, I've given you 3 different ways. The first is the top-down model. In this, the club leader is at the top. She gets help from the assistant leader and the secretary. Or you can have a collaborative model. The leadership responsibilities are shared. In the third model, it's called a rotation model. Members each take turns leading the club. Maybe they want to lead for 1 meeting, or 2 or 3, or maybe for several months. When their time is up, the next member takes leadership. As you look at these different models, let's go to a poll question. And I'd like to ask you, which model might work for your club? Or in the chat box, do you have a different model? Let's see what's going on in some of your clubs. It looks like about half of you are using the collaborative model, a third of you are using the rotation model, and only a few of you, about 15%, are using the top-down model. Oh, that's very interesting. So interesting for us to see the variety around the world. Terrific. Let's return now to the presentation because I'd like to talk about the communication system. As you can see in the slide that's coming up, I have given you one example of a communication system. Here, the leader communicates with perhaps 2 club members or 3 club members, and then each of these club members communicates with additional members. In the chat box, could you tell us how you communicate with your members? And let's see what you suggest. I see some of you find the model reminds you of Toastmasters, and some of you find the collaborative model to be good. And how about the communication system? We have different levels of students, so I'm sure that creates a bit of a complicated structure for communicating. I see that some of you have direct communication and some of you use social media. That's fabulous. Let's go now to the chat box because I'd like to have you think about club rules. What is one club rule that you have or that you think would be important to have in your club? I can see that we've got some answers here. Everyone should talk, always speak in English, have fun, mobiles off, no politics. Wow, it's almost as if you've read my presentation ahead of time. Let's look at your ideas and compare them to mine. On this slide, you have an example of one club meeting that I attended in Goma in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. You can see on this slide that some of the club rules are all members must participate or tell someone if they can't attend, no laughing, everyone must be supportive, be respectful of everyone, and all members are free to attend and communicate with each other. Here are some more club rules or themes of club rules that are important. Besides rules about time and respect, you might want rules about participation. How often can someone participate? You might consider rules about political discussions and religions. In some clubs, we've seen that there are rules that say no discussions about religion or no discussions about politicians. In one club, we saw a rule about relationships. The rule said no one can look for a husband or wife in this club. At another club, we had the rule no dating. I think that everyone agrees that we should have rules, but why should we have them? How can rules help a club? What problems can rules help to solve? In the chat box, I'd like to hear from you. What are some of the challenges or problems that you have when you have your English clubs? So let's see what some of the problems are. Yes, shy members. Yes, politics. The multi-levels of participants. Absolutely. All of these are important problems or challenges for clubs. Let's look now at why rules are important, and let's look at some of the ways in which we can address some of the challenges. What can we do if members talk too much? Do you have this problem? How about if you raise your hand, how many of you have a problem with members talking too much? Let's see, do we have any hands raised? I am not sure here.
Hi everyone, this is moderator Heather. We're currently having an audio problem. Please continue to wait for just a moment and we will work to resolve it. Thank you for your patience. Just a moment.
Hi, everybody. I seem to have lost you. I hope we're all back together again. Are we all okay? Yes, good. Okay, so we're on the question of rules, challenges, and solutions. Some members talk too much. What can we do? We can pick one member who becomes the turn monitor, who makes sure that everybody participates. We can also have members who choose a time limit for each speaker, and with the time limit, then we need to choose a timekeeper who will be responsible for keeping the time. Another problem that we found is that men speak more than women. What can we do if men speak more than women? We have several suggestions. First, the leader in private encourages women to speak more. Second, some meetings have separate rooms for men and women, depending on the topic, or some meetings are for men only and others for women only. And finally, we have meetings where members can present a skit that is a role play about this problem, and then members can talk about it. Here's a photo of an example at the White House English Language Club in Congo, Brazzaville, where 3 members are performing a skit in which the topic is about men and women in conversation. Sometimes presenting a skit can allow members to talk more freely about these kinds of gender problems. Another problem we saw is that members argue about grammar, vocabulary, controversial issues, politics, or religion, and we propose that one member can note grammar or vocabulary problems and discuss these at the end of the meeting, or find the answer and report back to the club at the next meeting. We can also have one member who is the monitor and reminds members about club rules. What's most important for me about club rules is KISS. Keep the rules simple, silly. Don't make complicated rules. Okay, what happens and when? In a community-based club, we can have an agenda that looks something like this. Today's activities are sharing, theater, interview, music, and debate. This was an agenda at the African Academy English Club. Or we can have a school club agenda. And on this slide you see that the club agenda is much more specific, with specific time elements indicated for each of the questions. I have a poll included here, but we're going to skip that because I know that I'm running out of time. Let me go briefly to how can we get started holding an election. You had a handout at the pre-webinar, so I'm not going to go through this in detail, but you nominate officers, you choose a timekeeper, you listen to the candidate speeches, you have question and answer periods. And here are a few photographs to show you in this one English club, the candidates are speaking, the members have chosen their candidates, they're lining up to distribute their ballots in the ballot box, and we are finally tallying up the votes. Tally means to add up the votes, and in the end we announce the club leadership. Now, I'm sorry, I'm rattling through here. I want to be sure that Bryce has enough time. So now I'd like to turn the mic over to Bryce, who will speak to you about English Language Club activities.
All right. Can everyone hear me? Is that a yes? Okay, very good. Thank you, Kathy, so much for the information. Now we're going to talk about what we can do in English clubs. So in the chat box, if you have experience with English clubs or you just have ideas, tell me, what are some fun activities people can do to learn English? Does anyone have any ideas? Singing, yes. Role play, very good. A drama, storytelling, games. Anything else? They go by so fast. Skits, group activities. So you can see there are so many things you can do to have members practice English. The main idea about English clubs is they're supposed to be fun. This is not a classroom. There is no teacher. It is members helping members practice their English. Just like playing on a football or a soccer team. Sometimes you just go out with your friends and you play. You don't need a coach. You just want to practice your skills. That's the main idea with English clubs. So, here is a picture of me. You get a new visual of what I look like. Today, we will discuss the following activities. Choosing a topic, or brainstorming, facilitated club discussion, group conversations, skits and role plays, debates, guest speaker, mock interviews, red pen, games and music, in the news, community projects, and special events. So take a note and think about whether you could do some of these activities in your own club. There are many activities not listed, so you can always add activities, and your club should always be bringing in new activities. This is just some ideas to think about. Many of these you will have experience with, and others may be new. Okay, choosing a topic, brainstorming. Brainstorming, you can see the brain in the light bulb. This is a way that you can get ideas from the members. So if you were my English club and we were going to meet next week, I would ask, what are some ideas or topics we can talk about? All ideas are good ideas. There are no bad ideas. You write all the ideas on a board or a piece of paper. Someone should take notes. And then the club should vote by hands how many people want to talk about this topic or that topic. And this allows the English club to be democratic, that every member can suggest a topic and that everyone votes on what the club is going to do. That's the one big thing I want you to remember about English clubs. They're democratic. They are member-led, meaning that the members should be the ones who make the decisions. Topics should be voted on. The top topics that have the most votes will be the topics you will discuss the following meeting. All right. So one of the first, after we have our topics in place, we can pair them with activities. So these are different kind of activities you can do. This activity is called the Facilitated Club Discussion. This works best when you have an interesting topic that was chosen to lead the conversation. There will be a leader of this conversation. They will help facilitate the conversation. They will not be doing the talking. They will make sure that everyone who raises their hand gets a chance to talk. But the leader of the conversation, or the facilitator, introduces the topics. They ask members to raise their hands to participate, to make sure that everyone gets the chance to speak. They make sure that both men and women participate equally. I noticed in the chat box earlier, people said, women talk more than men, or men don't talk as much, or vice versa. But what we have found is oftentimes men dominate the conversation, or they interrupt women. And sometimes people don't get a chance to talk. So you want to make sure that everyone has a chance to talk. So if you're leading the conversation, make sure that are only men talking, are women talking, are only older people talking, or are younger people talking. You want everyone to have a fair chance to talk. During the facilitated club discussion, the facilitator asks questions to keep the discussion going. The big thing is do not dominate the conversation. Allow members to do all the talking. Sometimes when I was learning the language and I would go into class and I would hear a teacher teach me a language, they spent the entire time talking and me as a student never got to practice. Well, in English clubs, members do all the talking, and that's what keeps it fun. So facilitated club discussion is a great activity that you can do every now and then. All right, group discussion. Many of you might have clubs with 100 members. How do you do group discussion? This might even be the same challenge you have in your classrooms. So in a club, in an English club, you divide the group into smaller groups and you assign roles. For instance, each member in that small group discussion has a role. One person can be the group leader. One person can be the group note taker. Somebody else can be the timekeeper. Another individual can be the vocabulary collector, where they're collecting and writing down new words or the words they use. And if one person in the club is really good, they could be the group grammarian, where they're listening for mistakes. Remember, group discussion works if everyone in that small group has something to do and some sort of responsibility. So if you were discussing the topic of, say, cooking, how to cook the best meal, you would have each group discuss the best meals, and then in that group, each person would have a responsibility. And at the end of the group discussions, maybe you would come back as a big club and listen to all the groups and what the members said. This is a very excellent activity you can do. My favorite are skits and role plays. These are small performances. A skit is a short conversation or two, a dialogue between two or more people. It usually tells a story or part of a story. And this is the same as a role play. A role play, two people take on a character and act out a scenario. Skits and role plays can be fun. They can involve music. They can make people laugh. Laughter is the best way to learn a language. They can teach an important issue in the community. For instance, if your community is struggling with a problem, skits and role plays might be a great way to educate the club membership, and then after the skit and role play, members can ask questions. So drama and performance is the best way to have fun and to teach new skills and to practice new language. Let's go to the next one. Okay, everybody loves debates, but remember, you do not need to have a debate every time you have an English club, but they're good to have every now and then. So in the chat box, what are some topics that could be debated in English club? What are some topics that could, I see one from Nepal, global warming, good topic you could debate. Gender equality, excellent. Politics, cooking, global warming. Social issues, media, lifestyle, music, pollution. You guys are so smart. There are so many good things. Leadership, corruption. You could debate about democracy, those sorts of things. Okay, as Kathy had mentioned earlier, in the club that I'm a part of, we have two rules. In my club, we say you cannot debate about religion, because clubs are a place where everyone from any religion or non-religion can come together. So we avoid that topic. 2, you should not talk about people in politics because it's too dangerous. But you could maybe talk about themes like corruption or democracy or those sorts of issues. So remember, you want English clubs to be respectful and fun, and at the same time safe. So whatever rules your club makes, you want to adhere to those. But essentially, you can debate about any kind of topic. So how does a debate work? A debate will have 2 teams. Team A is for the topic, or this is the pro side, and Team B is against the topic, this is the con side. The debate should have a facilitator. Basically, the facilitator introduces the debate topic, introduces the 2 teams, and the rest of the members sit and listen and write questions for the end. A member of Team A makes a point, and then TB responds. A member of TA listens to TB's response and responds back. This goes back and forth for the two teams to debate. The facilitator keeps them on time and manages the debate. At the end of the debate, the facilitator asks the club membership to ask questions for either side. And at the end of that, the club can vote who won the debate. Debates are great, but remember, you don't need to debate every English club. Every English club should be a little bit different. All right. One of my favorite is guest speaker mock interview. A guest speaker is someone who can discuss a topic at your English club. English speakers might be located at hospitals, schools, universities, international businesses, non-governmental organizations, embassies, libraries, or in your community. You could get a doctor at your hospital to come and talk about health. You could go to the embassy and get someone from the U.S. Embassy to come and talk about what they do, or someone with the United Nations, or a business leader. You invite them in, you introduce them, they talk, and then you can ask questions. You could find an expert guest speaker who speaks English in your own club who might want to lead a conversation. Mock interviews are a great way to practice job interviews, news interviews, expert interviews, celebrity interviews, interview a club member. One time for one club, we did a celebrity interview, and one member in the class said that they were going to be Michelle Obama, and the other person was going to be a reporter, and he interviewed Michelle Obama. She was not the real one, that were in role play, and it was very fun and very exciting, and we learned a lot. So these are different ways that can be fun and exciting to bring to your English club. All right. I noticed earlier somebody said, what about people who make grammarian mistakes? This activity is called red pen. At the start of the meeting, ask a member who's good at English to do the red pen. This person will be appointed to listen to members' mistakes. In their notebook, they will record all the mistakes on that notebook. They will share the mistakes at the end of the meeting. They will not use names, and at the very end, they will stand up and say, here are the mistakes I heard without using names, and then they will correct those mistakes. So that means during the whole process of the meeting, you have one person listening for mistakes, and at the very end of the meeting, they'll come back, share those mistakes, maybe give new vocabulary, and then the club can talk about how to fix the mistakes. That's called red pen. Remember, English clubs don't have teachers. We have members helping members. So this is an activity you could do for 5 or 10 minutes. Games and music. Activate games, games for learning American English. So U.S. State Department of American English, Monopoly, cards, flashcards, word games, charades. Those photos are from Comoros. The two bottom photos, people are playing the Activate games. The top photo is my colleague playing a guitar. And the other one is the English Club Choir singing about English Club. People love music and games. If you want people to learn language, it has to be fun. Since this is about members, think of fun activities and bring it into the club. All right, this is my favorite activity called In the News. What is the purpose of In the News? Keeps members informed about current events, allows them to practice their English language skills. This works by bringing in news or having members bringing in important news into the English club and discussing it. So you could share current news on global, regional, national, or local events. You can find an audio recording from a radio programs like Voice of America or BBC and have the club listen to the broadcast and then discuss the news. Have members share the news they know. Discuss the news from one another. Remember, English Club is about having fun practicing English, but it's also teaching in a way that we can become aware of our world around us. A lot of times people don't have access to news. So while they're practicing their language skills, they can also learn about the news And we all know how important it is for everyone to be aware of the news. So this could be its own individual activity. All right. The English clubs I have been a part of wanted to make a difference in their community. My English clubs that I have worked with want to fix community projects. So English clubs in Comoros, like in this photo, as a group, they came together. They identified in this photo that the hospital was dirty. They organized with community groups and they cleaned up the hospital. As a club, they discussed possible solutions. They decided how to help and solve the problems, and they organized an activity back to their community. English clubs are powerful groups of community members who want a better world. Your English club could be visual by doing community projects and making the world a better place. Possible projects: cleaning up a public park, a beach, a public space, recycling, volunteering with local non-government organizations, teaching English for others. You could create youth English clubs that promote literacy or human rights or equality or making the community better. English club members are leaders because they want to help their community. Okay, let me go to the next one. Special events. English clubs are about having fun. So this is Iftar that we did. The English club organized an Iftar in Comoros. Happy Eid to my Muslim friends around the world. English clubs can have these kinds of events. You could go to sporting games, singing competitions, spelling bees, art competitions, volunteer projects, visiting schools to promote English, planting a tree. English clubs can create reading clubs, writing clubs, singing clubs. They can do fun things. English clubs are about creating communities. Communities of learners and people who care about each other. All right, I am going to turn this back over to Kathy. Thank you very much, everyone. This has been a pleasure. I will leave my email.
Thank you, Bryce. So, in conclusion, let's review what we've talked about and learned about today in this webinar. Today, we talked about a definition for English language clubs. We also talked about how to create clubs. We talked about finding members. We talked about creating a leadership team. And we talked about meeting times and places. We also talked about the challenges and solutions for sustaining English language clubs. And finally, with the help of Bryce, we talked about the activities that can be done for English language clubs. So, as we approach the end of this webinar, we have just one final question to ask you. Here it is. What is one idea you learned today that you want to try? One idea that you would like to try. Red pen in South Africa, red pen in Japan, community clubs in Brazil. Oh my gosh, I need to be able to read faster. We're lots of red pen, forming a society. Oh my God, this is so much fun watching all of this. KISS, oh yes, of course we have to remember KISS. KISS and red pen, the English club translating, mock interviews, spelling bees, current events. This is all really, really fabulous. And let's see what else we've got here. Role plays, news, discussions, games, and music. Wow, this is really, really fabulous. I hope that you will communicate with us over the next week or so because we'd like to hear how things are going. I see Congo Brazzaville is there. Fabulous. Really, please share with us how things are going in your clubs. We would love to stay in touch. You already have the article that's going to appear in the next forum that gives you further information about this. And also on the Ning are the 3 handbooks that I have written which give you further ideas and specifics about how the ways in which you can create English language clubs. Okay, so I want to thank everyone, including the people at American English and especially Katie and Heather and my colleague Bryce. And thank you to all of you for your participation. Merci, asante, çok teşekkürler, amasegnallah. I wish I could say all the different languages. A huge, huge thank you. And I am going to be turning the mic back to the moderators. Okay, take care now. Bye for now.
Thank you so much, Kathleen and Bryce, for your in-depth and practical suggestions for forming and sustaining English language clubs. The information you covered today will be really helpful, I think, for those interested in starting a club, as well as to those who work with existing community and school